Did you know that between April 2020 and July 2021, more people moved out of Nebraska than moved to it? That's right. Within the time span of just a little over a year, Nebraska saw a negative net migration of 3,378. This might seem surprising. After all, during this time, remote work was taking off, and more people were moving from urban areas to rural areas than the other way around, and Nebraska is definitely not urban. So what's the reason for this? Well, today on Across the Globe, we're going to look at some of the explanations for why people aren't moving to Nebraska. Number 1, lack of job diversity. Nebraska is a major agriculture state. And while it may be most known for corn production, there's a reason it's nicknamed the Cornhusker State. Its biggest farm product is actually beef. In fact, there are approximately 19,000 cattle ranches in this state. Another major industry in Nebraska is manufacturing. The state has approximately 1,600 manufacturing facilities that employ about 100,000 Nebraska workers, which is about 10% of the state's entire workforce. While this is great if you work in agriculture or manufacturing, if you're looking to work in another industry, especially one that requires a high level of skilled labor, you might have a harder time in this state. Nebraska has actually seen a major brain drain in recent years, with those with higher levels of education leaving the state to find work elsewhere. That has also resulted in Nebraska being ranked 26th in the nation when it comes to its population of people 25 years and older with a bachelor's degree or more, with only 33% of its population meeting this criteria. In other words, there aren't as many opportunities for work in Nebraska for those with the highest levels of education. And so many of these people are leaving Nebraska, or at the very least, not moving there. Number 2, high taxes. This might come as a surprise to you, but taxes in Nebraska aren't cheap. Nebraska has a 5.5% state sales tax, a maximum local sales tax of 2%, and a combined average state and local sales tax rate of almost 7%. On top of that, Nebraska's income tax ranges from 2.46% to 6.84%, and its corporate income tax rate is anywhere from about 5.58% to 7.81%. Overall, this means that Nebraska isn't really considered the most friendly state when it comes to its business tax climate. Number 3, it's isolated. Let's face it, Nebraska is pretty isolated. While it may not be as far removed from the continental U.S. as Alaska or Hawaii, it's pretty far from most major cities, and that makes it particularly challenging when you're trying to leave the state. As one Nebraskan reports, if you're looking to travel to a popular national or international destination, it might take you a while coming from Nebraska. This is especially the case if you're looking to travel abroad. According to Wright Realtor, Nebraska doesn't even have an international airport. While of course you can take a domestic flight from a Nebraska airport and connect elsewhere, if you're looking to fly direct from Omaha to London, for instance, it's just not going to happen. For those looking to drive to the closest international airport, that means traveling across state borders to Denver International Airport in Colorado, according to Nebraska Traveler Guide. Number 4, its big cities are small. Nebraska is by no means the most rural state in the country, but when it comes to the size of its cities, these might not cut it for those looking for an urban experience. For instance, the largest city in Nebraska by population is its state capital, Omaha. However, this city only has a population of about 487,000. Meanwhile, the state's second largest city, Lincoln, has a population of less than 300,000. Obviously, these cities aren't tiny, but they are small enough that they may not provide the urban experience and amenities that many people are looking for. Number 5, crime. According to U.S. News, Nebraska is ranked 31 when it comes to crime. That's compared to all 50 states, meaning that Nebraska is in the bottom half when it comes to its overall record on crime. I'll be clear, Nebraska is clearly not the worst in the country when it comes to crime, but it's also not the best. For instance, 2020 records show that Nebraska had a violent crime rate of 284.4 per 100,000 people. Nebraska doesn't have that stellar of a record when it comes to public safety either. For instance, U.S. News ranked it number 23 in terms of its property crime rate. All in, Nebraska's mediocre crime rating may mean that people just aren't incentivized enough to stay or to move here. Number 6. Lack of public transportation. Given its lack of large cities, it should come as no surprise that Nebraska doesn't have a lot of public transportation options. Omaha, for instance, has a walk score of only 48. Its transit score, meanwhile, is only 24. Compare that to the most walkable city in the U.S., New York City, which has a walk score of 88 and a transit score of 89. And you can probably understand how car-dependent those living in Nebraska's cities are. Number 7. It's rural. The population density of Nebraska of 2020 is 25.5 people per square mile. That means that if you walk 1 square mile on average, you'll only run into about 25 people. According to Statista, Nebraska ranks in the bottom 10 when it comes to population density, with only states like the Dakotas, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Alaska, and New Mexico having lower population densities. Of course, this low population density isn't a bad thing per se. To some people, it's paradise, but the point is that it's not necessarily a lifestyle that suits everyone, and for some, the fact that they might drive for miles and miles without really stumbling upon another soul is enough to keep them away. Number 8. Extreme weather. Another thing keeping people away from Nebraska is its weather. That's because Nebraska is actually known to have a pretty extreme climate. For instance, its winters are freezing and its summers are scorching, giving residents a metaphorical whiplash with the change of the seasons each year. Let's start with the summer. While highs are typically around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, once you factor in the humidity, which can range from 80 all the way to 90%, you have a recipe for a scorching, sticky summer. There are also plenty of thunderstorms, meaning that your attempts to bask in the sun may be frequently rained out. Then we have the winter, which sees temperatures struggling to hit 30 degrees and often well below freezing. Not to mention, Nebraskans also have to deal with regular blizzards and ice storms in the winter. Then, of course, we have the tornadoes. That's right, Nebraska lies right in the middle of what's known as Tornado Alley. This terrifying name refers to a cluster of states that see a regular path of tornadoes each year, and by regular, I'm not exaggerating. Nebraska sees an average of, wait for it, 45 tornadoes every single year. Number 9. Lack of diversity. Last year, WalletHub ranked all 50 states by diversity factors like socioeconomic, cultural, economic, household, religious, and political diversity. The findings weren't that great for Nebraska. Overall, it ranked number 26, making it not the worst when it comes to diversity, but pretty far from the best. WalletHub gave it an overall score of 64.78 out of 100, and while it ranked an impressive number 4 when it comes to religious diversity, it ranked pretty poorly in other categories. Key among these was the category of household diversity, where it ranked 47, above only Wyoming, Idaho, and Utah. It also ranked poorly when it comes to cultural diversity, ranking 33. Number 10. The roads are bad. I can bet you that people aren't basing their decisions of where to live exclusively on how good or bad the roads are, but I will say that the quality of Nebraska's roads definitely aren't a point in its favor. Apparently, potholes are bad enough in Nebraska that it has a yearly pothole season, referring to the time when the snow melts and exposes dozens of treacherous potholes before the state has time to patch them up. Like what seems to be every other item on this list, Nebraska isn't the worst state when it comes to potholes, but it's also not the best. It kind of ranks, well, squarely in the middle. For instance, it's reported that every 1,000 kilometers of road in this state, there are 2.3 pothole complaints. For reference, the state with the most pothole complaints, Rhode Island, has 23.4 complaints for every 1,000 kilometers of road. The state with the least amount is Idaho, with only 0.4 complaints for the same amount of road. Now, it's possible that people in Rhode Island just complain more than those in Nebraska, but regardless, it appears that Nebraska's roads just aren't in the best shape. What about the states everyone is leaving? Watch this video to learn about that.